Already started. Fantastic. All right, welcome everybody. Tonight's focus with this Thoughtful Thursday is dedicated to a little bit of personal preparedness and the idea of using superfood systems for radiation protection. Um, Regardless of whether or not you know Fukushima, the name, the event that happened 4 years ago, um, it's still happening. So it's not in the news. No one talks about it. Um, we've since had three or four other small nuclear releases, whether it's steam, waters, things of that nature throughout the country. It does happen pretty routinely. And really, since we started messing around with the atoms in the 50s and using nuclear technology, we've been really just putting a ton of it into our water, our air, our soil. We are one state away from some of the largest concentrations of underground nuclear testing. And obviously, we are close to um, one nuclear reactor that's actually been supposedly decommissioned and is no longer in operation, supposedly. And the idea is that there are more repositories and things of that nature and other nuclear power stations that are to our west that we also just need to be aware of and to be careful for. We will go through what I would call the basics of being able to start a system today for anybody who's been alive for longer than a year, because your body has accumulated this material and it is inside your system, even if it's dealing with it very well. That's the other interesting problem. Um, great story to kind of put this into perspective is that there was an amazing scandal in the north portion of the state of Texas and the southern portion of the state of Oklahoma, where the water authorities had known for greater than 30 years that there was actually depleted uranium and plutonium in the groundwater supply. And of course, there's really no way to filter this out of the system very effectively when you're using mass scale water production systems. So people on a routine basis were getting all sorts of types of dysfunctions, cancers, issues in their bodies from drinking radioactive water on a routine basis. They technically knew about it, but because why tell somebody if they could, be hurt by this? Um, the idea was they kept kind of just pushing it down the road. Oh, when it gets too high, then we'll start talking to the public. Um, and it went on for a little over 30 years. So it's one of those things where inadvertently you can be exposed to radiation at any point in time. Anytime you get into a other than private airplane, for the duration that you are above 30,000 feet, you're getting exposed at anywhere between 4 to sometimes 10 times the amount of radiation, just due to the solar atmosphere decrease. And if we're in the middle of a solar storm at that particular time, it's going to be much higher. So radiation systems in California, we always talk about things like radon, and being able to keep ourselves prepared from even our countertops are actually one of the largest sources of radiation. It comes from and emits out of the granite. And when you slap your food on it, put your elbows on it, it is still affecting your body. Here's the great thing. You can deal with about 2.5 to 3.5 millisieverts, or approximately 300 rems of radiation per year. So we'll get into some details about what that means. Your body does have a way of handling this. The problem is that's over an entire year. What we're going to talk about today will actually expose a lot of the details regarding what happened the moments after Fukushima, or any nuclear explosion, and what that exposure level means today, and where we're really failing our children by not taking care of this problem and dealing with it in an effective manner, and understanding the seriousness of the nature that we're actually getting ourselves into. But as we do every Thursday, we are going to begin with our conscious breathing exercise. I actually need this a little more than anybody today because it's been stressed these last couple of days. So, everybody who's been here before, anybody who's catching us online, One of the things we do is we like to take a few moments, 30 seconds to be exact, to breathe very, very deeply. And we'll take 7 seconds for that. Then we'll exhale for 8. There's 15 seconds. We'll repeat that twice. So 2 times 15 is 30. And then we get 30 seconds of space. And we get our ability to actually. Why do you have a stevia bottle out? What are you doing with the stevia bottle out? You and your stevia. Um, Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I'm like, really? You're just because you like it, you love it so much, it just needs to sit right there and just make sure you can see it and no one takes it. That's awesome. All right, all right. So back to the breathing exercise. 7 seconds of breath in, focused on the diaphragm, really blowing everything out here, getting out as deep as possible. We're going to take that moment now. You can join us if you're watching us live. If you're not and you're catching us later, do it now, do it often. You'll really enjoy the practice of deep breathing. Conscious breathing works really well for helping us get into a great mode and into doing this. So 7 seconds of breath in. Holding at those last few seconds, and 8 seconds of breath out, all the way down to nothing. 7 seconds of breath in, holding, and 8 seconds of breath out. Fantastic. Thank you so much for spending that time. All right. So, minus the nuclear technician in the back of the room, um, does anybody else here know what radiation is, does, and how it works? Okay? It's one of these things, it's around you all the time, it's doing its job, and yet we very rarely stop to think about it as an actual function or a system and energy of our entire environment. Um, light is radiation. It's the excitation of a photon to the point of it moving from a source point forever until it actually hits something and is either reflected or absorbed. That's a type of radiation. Um, when we look at an X-ray, we understand that the reason we can see our bone as if we took the skin off is that the bone is more dense, meaning it diffracts a particular radiation, X-ray radiation of light, and that shows where the bone is compared to the skin. So that's a very easy to understand form of radiation. Um, when we think about what we're meaning more on this is we're wanting to take the conversation away from those natural sources, and we're really trying to focus on the idea of what we've done in terms of compressing, enriching, and then utilizing radioisotopes for human power generation, different types of developmental industrial techniques, and getting ourselves to understand that the natural system we have a great way of taking care of that was designed for us and given to us in a way to where we can operate with it, we can do what we're doing. But what's funny is we've actually gone a few steps above and beyond, and we've started to play with things that really we only get a basic understanding for, and a determined amount of time to see what we want to pull away from it. We really started the nuclear age when we were just really becoming an adolescent in the Industrial Revolution. We probably shouldn't have been given a powerful technique for manipulating things before we could have gotten ahead of ourselves. And just like the 16-year-old in the sports car, the funny thing is the pedal goes fast, and if you don't know what that can do or how it can work, you can get yourself hurt pretty quickly. Um, Fast forward 60 years, 60 plus years now, And we're in a position today to where we have decidedly become a point to where our waste products are overabundant, our power generation systems are failing and getting old, and we're stuck in a situation today where a natural disaster combined itself into a man-made disaster by having a nuclear plant in front of a tsunami. So it's interesting when we go through this process of understanding where we are and why, and getting out of a sort of safe kind of place where we just think, oh, it's all going to be all right. Sorry to say it, but there's a really, really good chance we're not on this one. The issue, and this is the major reason why I say that this event, Fukushima, that happened, I believe, on March 11th, 2011, um, is different than anything that's ever happened before, is it hasn't stopped. Chernobyl exploded on a day in the 1980s and went around the world and caused its damage. But it stopped. We covered it over. We solved the problem the best way we knew how by pouring concrete on top of it, and we left it there. And it's doing its job, and it's not going anywhere, and it's not connected to anything really too global. It still has affected the planet, but it's not being transmitted around the world the way that this is. When Fukushima occurred, this radiation exposure started from an actual reactor exploding into the open air. Um, the single reactor that exploded that day, or 3 days later actually, is then complicated by the fact that the other reactors minus one have melted through their containment holes and are now sitting below the soil and in the ocean water level, leaching material every single day with no interruption. Um, to prevent further explosion, the way we're working this process today is we're actually pumping ocean water up through a series of trucks, taking it higher and higher to get out of the ocean level, up above the plant, and then using spray guns to actually keep putting water on top of the actual nuclear reactors in order to cool and calm them, because if they get too hot, they'll continue to explode and continue to react and continue to do a lot of very bad things. But the funny part is that we're obviously then taking ocean water, spraying it on this, and it's going somewhere once you spray that water. And the containment system we have is not as large as what we would like it to be. Technically, it's probably close to the size of the moon already. And we're now letting that material go away from the reactors after it's been sprayed over top of it in order to not have to worry so much about trying to contain it. So here's a secondary source of this problem getting worse. Um, so the funny thing is we are 4.5 years past the date of it actually occurring, and we are still allowing the company that actually began the process and their issues and their government system that's surrounding them to be doing a job. The best way I can give this to you is that it's been about 4 years of watching Larry, Curly, and Moe try to solve a building fire. And there's really not anything that's a better solution that so far really anybody knows. There are other agencies that have better technologies and different ways of working around this. They're not brought in. They're technically still sort of kept at bay. It could be a pride thing on the Japanese government and their company. It could be some sort of issue that's just making things a little bit of a bigger problem. But the reason that today we're kind of going over this is because the effects this long after are just now being felt here in this United States, and especially the northern portion of the United States on the West Coast, but throughout the rest of the world. And if it takes us to become a little bit more informed and be a little bit angry about it and be a little more active on our own parts, then maybe we can see a solution in the future. But this is a 30 to 60 to potentially 180,000 year problem that we don't know how to solve. the funny thing that I know that I've heard people say is that, oh, well, the cesium has a half life of 2.5 years. It's been 4 years, so it's almost gone. No, that's not the way reactivity and radioactivity operates inside our system. It's 2.5 years for half of it to go away, and then 2.5 years for half of that to go away, and then 2.5 years for half of that to go away, and then all the way until technically forever. It never completely dissipates. It never is going to go away. And that's just one of the radioactive compounds that's been exposed to the environment coming away from the situation. So, like a good holistic person that I am, if I can't go to Japan and stop the problem, the only way I've been able to come up with a way to keep myself sane is I can take care of my own family, my own household, and people I know and care about in these sort of talks and these discussions by giving you the equipment that you're going to need in order to actually keep yourself healthy to the best possible ability that I can help and that I know how. One of the interesting numbers for people to kind of wrap their head around to see um, how this is very different. So the total cesium count of 137, radioactive cesium, which is a component of every single human bone and every other animal's bone in our body, and again, not just bone, but a lot of other pieces, but is to the point of about 100,000 times greater than the single eruptive event of Chernobyl. We always hear how Chernobyl was a bigger explosion, and yes, they did have more immediate uranium plutonium release into the atmosphere that was traceable, and that was actually something where it was very true to be said that there was a bigger explosion with more reaction. But the longevity of it is that it actually lasted much longer. This is going to go on forever, and there's really no way to find a system to get up. But when we try to push a problem off as saying, oh, well, it's not as big as that one, that's still not dealing with the problem. The idea is if your upstairs has got a tiny fire in it and you're downstairs smelling the smoke and you just go, well, it's a little fire. It's not going to go anywhere. It'll be fine. You're not understanding the situation that you're in then. We currently, as far as we're informed of, do not have a planet B or a exit strategy that will support any number of people. We can get about 4 or 5 people into the International Space Station, and on an average day, we can put about 3 or 4 people into space. So that's about all that's getting off the planet. Everybody else here has to deal with this problem. So we are stuck in a scenario here to where people, for one, don't know, and that makes them walking around thinking that everything's okay. And two, no one really is putting that call up there and getting the press they deserve for actually saying, hey, listen, we got to deal with this. It's not a single country issue anymore. We know it's affected ours and Canada at least. It's destroyed most of the fishing systems that exist over in the area of Japan and Russia and the areas of where we have good fishing and material that are coming there. But we've had everything from atmospheric, nearshore, hemipelagic, middle of the ocean, and pelagic death occurring in our Pacific Ocean for the last 4 years. This includes everything from the giant oarfish that washed up on our shores and was actually here in this particular area a couple years after Fukushima. That was a big event for people. These are the 80 and 60-foot long fish that wound up dead floating on the ocean. To the fact that Newport Harbor is experiencing the largest tuna crab die-off that they've ever been able to see. I forget, or wait, that was no, that was Newport. Um, there's another occurrence where I think we had a tremendous die-off of smelt occur on our ocean front, and a lot of times they do say this has nothing to do with the radiation issue over on the Japanese island. It's just a natural cycle, and that's the way dead things occur. Is always at 150 million members of a species at a time. Never do they just get one fish dying like a normal aging population. But it is interesting that we know from testing that the existing fishing population with everything from mackerel to tuna to salmon is being tested to have radiation that's directly linked to Fukushima. And they are being fished out of waters that are away from the island. So it's not that 5 miles away from the actual reactor you're getting a little bit of radiation. These are Canada sourced fish that are being caught, and they're having sizable amounts of radiation found in their bodies. Um, and here's the funny thing, a lot of people would then say, I don't eat fish, I'm safe. The funny thing is that with the atmosphere and the rain cycles we have, every time you get a little bit of precipitation, those radionuclei are dropping onto your safe plants and vegetables that keep you healthy. So strontium, cesium, iodine, all of these compounds are being deposited due to the Coriolis effect and the winds in our atmosphere right onto the even organic plants that you believe you're eating in extremely healthy ways. And again, if it was one of those things where you could deal with a small portion of radiation per year, probably be no issue. But the accumulation is the biggest problem, and it's something that doesn't go away. Once your body latches onto a radioisotope, it technically starts burning everything that's around it. That's how it operates. That's what it does. So when we get into some of these details on how to do prevention, it is a strong suggestion to not bury your head in the sand, not think it's going to go away, even not have the attitude of, well, I'm this old and it'll be all right, someone else will figure it out. The activity of people that we need to see today is everyone needs to be angry. Everyone needs to be upset. It's almost one of those to where you need to say, let's stop worrying about anthropogenic global warming for a couple of years since that cycle has kind of seemed to stop. And let's start focusing on active radiation leaks in our ocean more so than carbon emission, cow farts, and gas catalytic converters on converting everything to electric vehicles. I know it's not going to make a lot of money, but it's one of those where I don't know where else you can go to get away from this problem, and I can't be more serious about the idea that it is one of these long-standing problems. Yes, there is this whole tagline: the solution to pollution is dilution. That is true. But the problem with dilution of radioactive material over 4 years is eventually there's a point where you can't take any more. And it doesn't matter how diluted you think you can put it out there in the atmosphere or into the ocean systems, it's going to have an effect. So we do see a lot of issues, a lot of problems occurring, but I'm a solutions person. That's what I love about thinking about things when it comes to being healthy and developing a pattern to where I can go to sleep at night comfortable, saying, well, at least I took my blah, blah, blah that actually helps me fight this problem. But I want people to understand that this is a um, strong scenario that you can do a lot by simply tuning in to things that matter. Fair Winds is a company and organization that I would highly recommend for anybody who wants more detailed information regarding the after effects of Fukushima and just radiation control and management, nuclear technologies and development throughout the planet. Again, what's funny about this one reactor is there are 300 more just like it. And at any point in time, an earthquake, a tsunami, a tornado, a something can happen to where you lose the ability to maintain control on these. And when they start to go, if you don't get the containment mechanisms operational as fast as possible, it goes. And there's nothing you can do to turn it around once it's done. Um, so as you go home tonight and have serious nightmares of the green-headed monsters from Mars coming in and destroying the planet, I apologize. But I hope it's motivation to get you out there to talk to some people in order to actually say, hey, listen, did you know that Fukushima thing hasn't gone away? Like, really? I thought that for some reason Donald Trump was running for president and everything else just went away as soon as that got announced. That there should be no more problems, that everything's just going to be taken care of. Again, One more president has all the answers. We're going to take care of everything from here. Um, I I know. It's funny because I guess if like I showed up and I put a little box on their front lawn that said caution, radiation, do not touch, do not be within 50 feet of this particular device, this box, maybe they'd care a little more, but they don't see it. Yeah. So therefore, how could you possibly be in a, in an issue of this? So there is, no one's taking a trip to Alaska here in the next like little bit of time, right? Okay. Don't. 2 years ago? You got in there just in time then. Don't. Don't go near the water. Don't go near the food. Don't go near the ocean. Don't go near the land. Don't go there. Um, Personal anecdotal stories that are not backed up by anything except for someone telling me, from fishermen, from people who are into this a little even more than I am. There are tremendous amounts of issues occurring, everything from British Columbia, Canada, all the way up through the tip of the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. More so to where it's starting to get to that shocking horror story level of blindness, skin irritation, major radiation poisoning. Animals are seeing it. We're definitely finding it in the populations of different animals, and it's something that it just takes a matter of time for that ocean current, because it moves from Japan on the Pacific side, from their area directly up and over to Alaska, down along the coastline into where we get to just about um, San Luis Obispo, and then it sort of treks out to Hawaii. So it's taken 4 years for it to get to concentration levels that are here in the actual continental United States. It'll take another year or two for Hawaii to really see coral die off, shark, issues, and all that start to be these other barometers that are telling us that yes, there's a major issue going on. I'm sure they'll find another climate change reason to say that it's not Fukushima, but it's one of those where be aware that that's coming around the corner. Um, so, everyone on their toes? Now, it's funny because I thought the same thing after the Deepwater Horizon incident and the Gulf of Mexico going to the issues that it had. That why did we allow the company that created the mistake to essentially continue to do the cleanup? That's like technically having the person crash the car, fix the car. Like if they're really good at fixing cars, fantastic. Hey, you're the right person for the job. Glad you crashed it. But if you mess something up the first time, I'm going to guess that you're not really prepared for the emergency level of fixing the problem in that sort of scenario as well too. And truthfully, I mean, I'm not a 100% doubting Thomas, but there isn't a system for this. That's the problem. Is there is no containment system. However, a 19-year-old from Italy did design a very beautiful collection system and ability for zeolite contraptions and radiation eating microbes to be released out of drone boats and in order to cover most of the top of the ocean. It would help, but we're not putting anything to use to that. I think he would have said it would have cost him somewhere between 30 to $40 million to clean the Pacific Ocean, at least in the upper 15 to 20 feet, and nothing. I know. See, crickets. That's right. Exactly. That's what you should be thinking. But no solution system. Currently speaking, the Japanese government is dumping barge loads of zeolite powder chunked up from Tonga, and the islands of the Philippines, and areas where corals are found, crushed calcium carbonate rock, in order to try to trap some of the radiation near the coastline of Japan. But it's only going so far. It's interesting because there isn't a plan for this. We have every ability to contain things above ground. Now that it's not above ground, we don't know what's going on. And a lot of the interesting theoretical stuff that's out there about this is that due to the reactors melting below the surface of the earth and going and burning holes, because they're hot enough to actually incinerate rock. So the idea is they're going down and fracturing the rock on the coastline of Japan and literally causing earthquakes and breaking more material and going deeper and deeper into the system. So it's unreal what's really kind of occurring and how this thing's happening. Um, solutions, solutions. Um, everybody here has probably heard of a little bit of activated charcoal. Whether it's a stomach ache, whether it's a really bad chemical burn or something, you probably have seen it in tablet form, in powder form, some sort of way of doing this. So it's definitely a great way of protecting your body from certain types of poison. Um, it's slightly strong enough to pick up some of the lower energetic radiation items like cesium, um, but not as strong as something like zeolite. Zeolite is probably one of the most effective clay minerals for being able to absorb radioisotopes into its clay lattice and to isolate them away from your body. So this is fantastic for people who are concerned and looking for a daily treatment system. The funny thing, again, I know because my fruits and vegetables are probably the thing that I'm getting more radiation from than anything because I try not to eat anything in the northern hemisphere anymore. Um, the funny thing is that I put this on my salads, so it goes in my salad dressing. And I know that my fruits and vegetables grown here locally are probably containing some particulate. So the idea is if I'm taking a remedy for it while I'm eating it, probably giving myself the best chances I can have. So zeolite powder, put into a sauce like that, it's actually not too bad. Yeah, a little chunky here and there, a little chalky, but balsamic vinaigrette, a little bit of avocado oil, fantastic. But the idea is to find that serious method and means. Every morning with my MSM, I'm also taking in a teaspoon of the zeolite just to be in the digestive system. So it's there in case it happens upon something that's radioactive. Like I say, you got to look at these isotopes and understand they not only vibrate higher energetics than what your body cells are able to take hold of. This is how they produce tumor systems, but they burn. They actually emit enough energy to where they incinerate material that's near them. So if one of these radioactive iodine particulates get into that thyroid gland, and it really only takes one, it can start the deterioration of all the cells surrounding that gland tissue and causing the death and the destruction of your thyroid. In the island of Japan, they are doing emergency thyroid removal on a lot of children because they know it's just going to be a problem. So the idea is cut it out now. That way you don't have a place to concentrate the radioactive iodine from your diet, from your water, from the environment as you're being exposed to on a routine basis. I can't say honestly that I disagree with them. It sounds extreme, but it might save them at least a little while longer. So when it comes to not only using things like charcoal and zeolite to absorb, one of the best preservation techniques for everybody here sitting today is keeping good quantities of iodine in your body means you are unlikely to absorb a radioactive iodine particulate in order to put it inside your body system. So your body, your thyroid gland doesn't understand the difference between a radioactive iodine 131 and a non-radioactive iodine 129. Doesn't see a difference. It says iodine is iodine. And when it gets into the body, again, what you're doing is you're collecting it over the course of exposure for it to eventually cause that type of damage to our thyroid system. Yes, no. So the question is one drop a day good enough? Um, that's to me a minimum. Um, everybody has a functional dose level of iodine their body can take in. Everybody has a system to where with the activity level and the toxicity level of their thyroid gland, you're going to have a certain amount of iodine that will be able to be tolerated by the body before creating a hyperthyroidic event. The point of it is to be just at that level to where you're getting as much saturation with not overstressing. So for myself, I take 29 drops a day. So that's a point to where, again, if I go to 30, 31, I feel weird. I can get the flushing. I can get kind of a skin reaction to where I feel kind of tingly and maybe a little lightheaded. And it's creating, because your body's now overproducing the heart connection. Again, the thymus gland creates the flushing reaction, or like a hot flash for anybody who's experienced those. That shows that you're getting a little too much iodine. But the idea is to get as much saturation as you possibly can so that you don't leave yourself open and exposed. Very, very critical. Uh-huh. Yep. That's actually where your body means that you're looking for more, and you probably can increase. Very true. A lot of people, when they start taking the iodine, they'll say it tastes like horrible back of the pocket pennies, and they'll go, "Why on earth would you make me drink this?" And that here's the funny thing about the human body. Tell a 4-year-old to pick up their toys. That's the reaction that happens when you first introduce your body to iodine is no. It tastes horrible. It tastes bad, and it's funny because that signal is really telling you you've got a deficiency. If your body was okay with iodine, it would say no real flavor at all. Sweetness obviously is one of those that your brain is sending a signal from the tongue system that says more, because that's actually giving you a signal. So that's a very good indicator that you probably could go up another drop or so and see how your body feels. Slow growth, obviously, is the right, safe way to do this. It's taken me a few years to get to this level, probably right about 4 years, because I remember the moment that I saw the reaction on TV of this particular reactor blowing up that I said, time to take iodine. um, Even though everything will be fine, no worries, no potassium iodate tablets were handed out. In the 50s to 60s, they gave every single family in certain cities and towns, especially military towns, potassium iodate tablets to carry around with you to have in your home just in case someone dropped a bomb on us. And yet, what's funny is they threw 4 bombs into the ocean, didn't tell anybody about it, and they don't give us a thing. So it is a definite security system for yourself to be proactive in not allowing the absorption of radioactive iodine back in the body. Hmm? I would say that's probably a pretty good. Your body will tell you, and that's the beauty of it. Is if you're paying attention and you're not just slamming your iodine, running out there, getting in the car, getting on the road, and being all angry and going, am I sweating because I'm mad and I don't like traffic, or am I sweating because the iodine's kicking in? But it is one of those to where, yes, I would say the average person will see a change within a couple weeks. If their body is accustomed to that level, then they can try and increase. You'll know the moment you take slightly too much. Again, it creates a very quick reaction in the body, and it's not that you're doing anything terrible. It's just you don't want to stay in hyperthyroidism for too long, just like you don't want to be hypothyroid. So it's a balance. I like to do about 8 ounces of water. The funny thing I will say is that after about 25 drops, it was a little too concentrated and actually started cleansing the inside of the stomach cavity for myself. So I started going to 12 ounces for because I do close to 30 now. And again, it's one of those where it should have a light coloration in the water. If it looks like a bottle of iodine when you're putting your iodine in there, it's again, iodine's very cleansing, so it's meant to clean bacterium, and just like taking it on a routine basis at too high of a concentration, it'll cleanse the internal probiotics of the body as well. Or yeah, that's a great way of going. Um, uh, that's even better. Yeah. Again, you're absorbing a majority of the nanoparticulate mineral inside the mouth when it goes through the connection here in the tissues of the mouth. The last little bit of it's going to be picked up by the stomach and absorbed there. And the rest of it that your body doesn't get the chance to absorb is just going to clear out bad bacteria through the rest of the intestines. So it's a beneficial thing on all directions. So there is a lot of good functionality in getting iodine concentrations back up in the body. Yes, go ahead. How many drops? 2. Yeah, so you're going on a good level. So 4 ounces, 2 drops, you're perfectly fine. Again, the concentration still is very lightly colored. So when you start seeing 10, 12, 20, then you'll say, okay, yeah, that's way too dark. And you'll know, like I say, as you're kind of seeing that occur. But yeah, if you're just doing a couple drops at a time, 4 ounces is perfectly fine. I like 8 because it helps me understand where I'm at, and especially doing hyperdosing. It's one of those where that number made a lot of sense. I have had a lot of people who are too sensitive to take even 1 drop in 8 ounces of water, and what I'll have them do is mix 1 drop in the 8 ounces and then drink 2 ounces of the liquid at a time, and that's their body will absorb the 2 ounces very effectively without getting rushed or getting too excited. Again, our conversation we have about healing the thyroid naturally is one of those where we understand our population is in a thyroid epidemic. Most of us have compromised thyroids. Most of us have issues in absorbing and keeping good serum iodine levels, and this is a problem across the board. So our 5 essentials talks about how to get iodine as one of these key ingredients, and Heal Thy Thyroid focuses a little more on the activation of getting your thyroid back into better function. So as we are kind of traipsing through here, another big piece in this when I talk about iodine and prevention is the idea of using vitamin D in a level to where you're not letting your D count get too low, which is one of the single most likely correlative factors for allowing cancers to develop in the human body. So if you're a deficient person in vitamin D, anything below 30, you are critical for getting that level up as high as you possibly can, as quickly as possible. If you're interested in understanding how to do vitamin D dosing recommendations and doing home testing, even, let me know. Send me an email. That way you can understand how to take yourself out of. Most people are between 20 and 30. And the funny thing is the healthy scale for even the standard allopathic medicine system is 30 to 100. And the weird part about it for me is with the Vitamin D Council and their research over the last 20 years on vitamin D explicitly, we have seen that the minimum recommended level of the blood system for vitamin D is 65. 80 to 100 is actually healthier. The average person who doesn't have to take a vitamin D supplement is one of those that we see who are living very tribal, very rural in their societies, exposed to sun a majority of the day, very little clothes interruption, definitely no sunscreen. And the funny thing is their vitamin D counts are about 100. So we see health occurring when we see higher doses and levels. And 100 years ago, we probably had that in our society here. The advent of showering takes away our vitamin D, the constant exposure to environmental toxicity, and just the inability to have proper functioning gut systems is where we're losing our vitamin D stores very rapidly. So very critical for prevention. Again, this is the idea of you need to be taking vitamin D in order to not allow something bad to happen later on. That's not going to stop it today, but it is a process that you need to go through in order to understand how you feel about your safety, your protection, the way that you're doing life and the system that you're operating in. So those two compounds, iodine and vitamin D, really help start the process of prevention. Um, Once something's been accumulated in the body, exposure's occurred. The unique thing is we then need to switch gears and we have to start thinking about how do I get this out. Again, it's very difficult. Cesium, strontium, both get built into bones. Iodine gets locked in the thyroid gland. Luckily, we don't use a lot of uranium, plutonium inside our bodies, unless you're maybe Superman or the Green Lantern or something like that. But the idea is that you don't have a system of the body where it needs those compounds to be a part of it. But in the radioisotope system, we want to start looking at ways of binding anything that we're coming in contact with, like we mentioned with activated charcoal and zeolite. And one of the strongest binders we have found for radiation is what's called pectin. Pectin is the material that we have found inside everything from apples to pears, or it's the white pith material on the outside of your citrus fruits. When you're eating a grapefruit, even though you like the middle, the interesting piece is that there's a very large white ring around the outside. If you're eating that on a routine basis, you're taking in citrus pectin. What we do is have a compound here that's a little more pharmaceutically researched and developed to be what we call modified citrus pectin. Now, typically, modified means GMO, and GMOs are bad, and we want to stay away from those as much as possible. This is different. This modification process is actually one to where they've bleached, or not bleached, but they've removed anything that's possibly locked up in the pectins and caused it to be a blank. So now it's open to absorb as much particulate as possible. So the modification is actually the removal of all the compounds and allowing it to be free and open. So anything that orange or apple or whatever was exposed to is typically locked inside the pectins, and we don't want to be absorbing that back into our bodies. Citrus modified pectin goes into the system. It focuses on everything from pharmaceuticals to radiation to even your own cellular toxin compounds that you can't remove from your body, like uric acids, hydrogen peroxide, things that your body can't eliminate, heavy metals, mercury, lead, arsenic, all of those down the path. Technically, anything with a very high negative charge, which is a lot of the toxin compounds that we get exposed to, is absorbed very rapidly into citrus modified pectin and taken out of the body. Our detoxify blend uses a very wonderful matrix of materials, though, and including things like turmeric, which not only is anti-inflammatory and really helps calm the body whenever we're inflamed or having issues with especially something like radiation exposure, but it also works as a very good expectorant and a way of activating the liver and cleaning the blood from being a very high antioxidant. So when it comes to stress in the human body, turmeric does a very good function. So if we combine that with detoxify, like we have here in this particular container, what's great is your body is more willing to expose and express these compounds outside of our system that we're holding on to, and have the absorption system for being able to actually lock it away and allowing you to pass it out of your body. The tricky thing about detoxing humans is that our lower intestines do a fantastic job at absorbing everything that we could possibly use inside our system. So when you flush or detox routinely, the interesting part is you always need to be able to bind material out of the body and let it be excreted properly. Otherwise, you'll hold on to it, and it'll just be moved around and reabsorbed instead of actually taken out of the system. And that's where, go ahead. Yeah. Kidneys, liver. Well, turmeric is just anywhere there's inflammation in the body. That's one of the best things. Citrus modified pectin, if you're talking more like kidney stones, just kidney cleansing the kidneys, yes, because again, it would be cleaning the blood system and making it to where anything that's a water soluble toxin wouldn't need to be affected to the kidneys as damaging. So you could decrease concentrations of certain compounds that could be irritating to the kidneys. So yes, definite big function there. If you're really working on the kidneys, though, look at things like goji berries. Fantastic there. Um, a really good is Trabilis as well too. Trabilis, Trabilis. And we do our Mucuna Trabilis blend for relaxation and hormone balance and positive mood focus. But Trabilis is a really good herb for the kidneys. And reishi mushroom is probably one of the strongest. Reishi does an amazing job at helping the energies of the kidney start to reactivate. Very, very good function there. So detoxify and turmeric combined in order to help us start to actually let the body want to let go of these things and to get rid of them properly. Compounds like MSM, I mentioned a little bit before, and TMG, these contain the methyl groups that actually go into the body and grab a hold of any particulate that needs to be detoxified and start pulling it out more effectively. So TMG and MSM are very, very critical for cleaning. And this is just general detoxification, let alone the idea of actually fixing radiation issues and radiation damage. And this is another one that a lot of times with kidney and bladder issues, um, this helps a lot with binding water soluble toxins that are so easy for the body to reabsorb, and getting them out of the body by helping take them and transport them away from the system, from the organs. The TMG does a fantastic job. And the reason I can vouch for that and know that is as many people as I have who start taking it, they will tell me that that first week of using TMG, they are usually using the restroom probably every 15 minutes because their body's finally flushing a ton of compound through the system and getting rid of anything that was an irritant. So it becomes a very, very good process in that sort of regards of getting things out of the body. TMG, the trimethylglycine. Yep. So TMG, it's right here, white powder. I do, of course. I see the benefits in it all the time. But it is one of those for a lot of people. Um, Here's me to get up on my soapbox and rant a little bit. Um, there's a major issue in our population that everyone's falling into, and it completely goes away from radiation, but then again, not so much. MTHFR gene dysfunction is a byproduct symptom of having low methylation, meaning you're not producing enough to clean your body properly, and so your DNA epigenetically changes to activate to say when someone reads your profile, oh, you're an MTHFR sufferer. The funny thing is that you solve it by just eating more methyl groups and getting rid of toxicity from your diet, from your environment, and from your body, because that's what's killing your methyl groups. So if you can clean yourself, your system, and actually start to benefit your body with reduction of the taxing of your methylation cofactors, then you'll improve an MTHFR person. I am tired, so tired of hearing people talk about being locked into their genes and can't possibly be able to heal and never going to get better and all the problems of this sort of deadened living limitless mentality. It's not true. Fix your body. You're in control. Here's the good stuff to do it with. A day, I would say somewhere between a teaspoon to maybe a tablespoon. About it's really light, so it's probably close to 5. Yeah, 4 to 5 grams at a maximum. Um, it really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Your body. One of the interesting things about pectins is that it actually doesn't treat it as an invasive compound. So it actually says, okay, sure, come on in and let's clean house. Let's get all this stuff out of here. Um, so it's unlike a lot of the activated charcoals, zeolites, where there's no biological necessity for it to actually want to detoxify with it. These zeolites, charcoal, what's interesting is they pass through the intestines, and the only place they really get to do their work is the blood system that's on the inside lining of our intestines. They don't get to go through the rest of the body. Pectin, on the other hand, citrus modified pectin travels, and it actually goes through the blood system and will work in areas where you have a higher concentration dose of certain compounds and help pull them out. So it does kind of a seek and destroy system, which is very, very different than a lot of other compounds that we use to pull material out of our body. And that's why it's probably one of the most effective and one of the most pharmaceutically researched. This is 15 years or so of really intense pharmaceutical research going behind understanding citrus modified pectin and the uses of it for chem. Yes, I do know who you're talking about, and I don't know his name off the top of my head. But yes, exactly. And that was one of his. Was he ate grapefruit rind all the time, and he just noticed he had 0 on all of the blood tests that show any toxicity levels. Didn't understand why until all of a sudden he's like, "Well, wait a minute. It's probably something for that I'm eating. Okay, great." And come to the discovery and understanding that it's something there on the pectins. Very, very functional material inside the human body and not limited. That's one of the big things. A lot of times for detoxification and chelation therapies, you have to know the exact chemical to match with the toxicity compound in order to pull it out. Pectins, there's really it's anything that's not meant to actually be there in the biological system gets pulled out. So it really works on a kind of cruise control, no-brainer, easy system for a lot of people. But a teaspoon is my average for a lot of individuals on a day-to-day basis. Just mainly because I don't want the body going into detox flu or having any kind of adverse reactions that are causing any other sort of issues. Teaspoon a day is fantastic. You can throw that into your MSM drink. You can put it into your protein shake or smoothie. Um, I know people who just eat it straight, which I think it's chalky. It's kind of and it's hard to eat because it starts gelling up really quickly. But now, if you're enjoying like even our, I think the one that I think the flavor blends in really well is either the Bag of Tricks protein or our vanilla toffee whey. A teaspoon of the detoxify is a great upgrade for people who just want to be focused a little more on detoxification. So definite benefits there. So I want to get into a couple more items like chlorella and spirulina, the blue-green algae, um, to make a big statement, I guess maybe to put something out there, is that we are in trouble because the sea provides so much in terms of food and minerals and things that our bodies actually need. So when the oceans turn bad and we can't use them anymore for the products that we actually take away from them, we're going to be in some trouble because I don't know any place else that we can get it from. Every ocean is connected to every other ocean. So all it takes is a matter of time for the water that's being put into the Pacific to eventually be affecting the Atlantic, to eventually detoxify the Indian, to eventually destroy the rest of the oceans surrounding this planet. Um, I hope it doesn't get to that point, but spirulina and chlorella are two ocean-generated algae, blue-green algae, that do a fantastic job at giving your body another system and form of not only getting nutrients but also detoxification. Um, One of the things that's very important is that you're sourcing chlorella, especially chlorella that is non-adulterated, has no other compound in it. It's 100% chlorella blue-green algae. That's very important. And if they can find a provider that's actually developing it to where it's in a closed system, meaning it's not exposed to atmosphere and outside water. A lot of blue-green algae are literally just grown in almost oversized bathtubs right next to the ocean. And they just let the ocean water get pumped in and they grow the algae and then they skim it off the top and then they put it in a bag. And anything that's toxic in that ocean, anything that's directly adjacent or in the atmosphere or available for these heavy detoxifiers, they'll absorb it just the same. And then you'll be eating the material from what they absorbed instead of actually detoxing yourself. So we don't want to do that. The nice thing is, again, with the spirulina, we're sourcing this from a southern hemisphere location, very high in the actual Ecuadorian mountains, in the Andes Mountains. It's fed by glacial meltwater. It's kept in lavic bed contact, so it's actually got a good mineral base to be an extreme donor of really good volcanic based minerals. Very different than the concrete lined or plastic lined bathtubs that a lot of other companies will make spirulina with. So this is one of those where, and again, I said that before, but start eating below the equator if you can. It's interesting, but there is New Zealand source salmon. They're still kept very pristine. I like them. They're about $40 a pound. There's a reason. Chilean sea bass material that's caught off of the south side of Baja technically today is still okay. It's maybe not perfect, but it's okay. At least it keeps you eating something. Um, Again, squid oils, sardines, anything that's sourced where we are in California and north has contamination issues. Anything that's below the equator line, the oceans haven't churned fast enough in order for it to become toxic to that area. So there's still some safety that's occurring. And some protection that we're in. So Antarctic sourced material, if you're going to eat sardines or anchovy or anything like that, and again, smaller fish better, but ultimately if it's bioaccumulating in them, it's going to bioaccumulate in you. So we need to be aware of what's going on out there. So the blue-green algae do a fantastic job at working well for our bodies and actually creating an overall best scenario to understanding what we're getting ourselves into as we go through and decide that we're going to have to take a pretty serious look at this problem. And I know it's one of those to where a room full of people today, there may not be a serious splash made into the solutions, but the biggest thing we can't do is stop talking about it and act like, again, it's just going to go away and it'll be no big deal, it'll solve itself. Never going to happen. Um, there are ways of doing protection plans that are actually more for direct or acute exposure. If somebody's looking to take this very gentle, very basic plan on using daily items for preventing radiation, um, in order to get a little bit of a better understanding on how to deal with something that's more local or another style of event like this. But that's, again, a little different functionality, and you're in more serious situations, and that always causes for a different approach. Um, so, no nightmares, key. Save yourself, key. Try to help others understand what's going on. Very, very important when it comes to this particular topic. There are a ton of benefits from getting on the 5 essentials, being very protective of your thyroid, being very focused on your liver health, and allowing your body to maintain and optimize itself as best as you possibly can. We really want to see good things coming around for people and not the after effects. I think it's interesting because I believe that there's a almost how would you say that? If enough time passes and our population does start suffering very directly from this, and the companies and the people involved are old enough or not there anymore to actually blame, then it'll just turn into no big deal. And we can't let that happen because, like I say, there's a huge problem here and it needs to be addressed before we can ever see any kind of benefit start to happen. And it's not for me, it's not for anybody who's alive today, it's for everybody else out there who's trying to think about the true future of this planet. It's taken a long time for all of the ocean that's there underneath of the Pacific, according to geologic time, to do what it's been doing, for it to recycle itself. So that process is something we don't want to wait on to let the natural system clean our mess because it will take that long. So we want it to be something that we can actively participate in and figure out a way to do it. I know we're smart enough. I know we could. But it's one of those where if no one's applying the potential for solutions, and we're just not making it a big enough issue, then that's where things just get swept under the rugs and no one really cares. So be as vocal as you enjoy. I'm one who doesn't take any doesn't lose an opportunity to say, well, it's not like we're experiencing the direct effects of Fukushima right now. I'm like, what? Oh yeah, like, and then it gets you into this conversation. You can talk to somebody about it. Um, but solution programs make me sleep at night, make my life happy, make me feel at least that there is something I can do instead of that there's nothing. So feel free if you have any personal questions regarding your own home use on any of these items. Again, anybody who's showing up here at the store, do we have a new code? Is getting 10% off of all their items. So we'll try to check out and get an activation code and throw it to the rebroadcast of this link for anybody who catches us online after this event. I'll probably be doing a similar talk, but a little more focused on July 25th in LA. That's going to speak mostly on the direct effects in the areas where we can see, and we have the mapping and the photography that I'll be broadcasting, and we'll get that recorded. But it's a little bit more of an up close and personal instead of about the actual protection program. but it'll give more pictures, more details. Great group of people in LA who's invited me back to talk on just the Fukushima issue. So if you can tune into that, that'll be July 25th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I believe. Um, that's a Saturday. Saturday. Um, so yeah, there's a lot that's been going on, and there's a reason why it's not on TV. So you'll have a link that'll come in from Ustream, and that'll give you the ability to be connected to me through that, and then I'll have it recorded afterwards. We'll throw it up on YouTube, and that way, if anyone can't catch it on this on July 25th on that Saturday, they'll be able to catch a rebroadcast of it and be able to see all of that information. So it's a talk I've been kind of building for about a year now, because most of the information I would either have to fly and get it myself, or the people who do put it out, they don't stick around for very long, which is one of the tough things of understanding this problem. It's bigger than we think, because a lot of the people who do put out any information somehow end up disappearing for a little while. But it is a fun process that we can go through and to be able to be informed and to know the system. So, any questions regarding any of those details? Sure. No. There is a couple of books regarding Chernobyl that have been either amended or kind of rewritten, and they are trying to put perspective on Fukushima. Um, I don't think they would ever let a book come out that would actually detail and describe this problem. Um, it would show some major issues, and it would be one of those where, I mean, I don't know. I guess I should jump on it tomorrow and see what happens. But Fair Winds is fantastic for the group of people there who are focused on just nuclear energy technology, responsible use of nuclear energy, and and the effects of what this is. Um, Again, this maybe didn't have to have happened. That's the problem that I always come back to. Is there was actually a report done a couple of years before this incident that actually said, hey, we think there's a good possibility if a sizable earthquake occurs off the ocean side there, you could have anywhere between a 10 to 12-foot high tsunami come in, and you've only got a 4.5, in one area it's a 6-foot wall. So let's maybe adjust this a little bit. That report was lost, quote unquote, for 2 years. It was actually reappropriated and reissued 3 days before the event. So it's very funny to me when things like that occur. It's kind of like you're at home, and the thing you've been looking for 2 weeks shows up right on your coffee table, and you're like, well, how did that get there? Like the obvious thing is right in front of you that you've been searching for. It is interesting because that shows that there was people thinking about this and trying to help and prevent. But by the time that occurred, it is one of those where I don't know if anybody here has even gone through and taken a look at the YouTube videos that show the rooftop images of the actual tsunami. It's amazing. I mean, from a geology perspective, it's amazing. From a human perspective, it's horrible. But it's one of those where when you watch what happened, I don't think you can put a brain around it until you've seen it and go, and then you have to watch it a few times and go, that's how it works. I mean, it literally is just one big nasty pile of water and everything it's picking up, and it just shoves. And there's just nothing that can stop it, move it, change it, go away with it. And it's interesting, after the 2003 tsunami that destroyed the Indonesian continent, and Sri Lanka and that whole area, and the amount of people who died from that there wasn't an immediate like, oh hey, everyone can take the seawalls up about 5-10 feet. Come on, let's just be safe on this. So it is interesting that we're in this situation, but yeah, it's definitely one of those processes where I'm curious to see how long it's going to take for a good book to come out. I know everyone here who's interested in this topic should be following the 54 corpsmen, military servicemen, Navy and Army. or Navy and Air Force who were immediate responders to the actual Fukushima plant in order to do evacs. They are the only active group I know of that's suing not only the Japanese government but TEMCO and all of them for the irresponsibility because they went into a hot zone without any protection, and they're paying the price for it. So it's a major, major issue. But they're the only people who I've heard loud about this. Everybody else is kind of like, yeah, there's a problem. Okay, worry about it tomorrow. It's just like the trash. It gets stinkier, but who cares? Don't worry about it. So I hope you've enjoyed. It's been a lot of fun. I'm glad I got to share this particular topic. For anybody who's caught this the second or third time, there are a lot more details coming up with the July 25th event. So feel free to catch us on that. Again, enjoy this evening. Thank you all for showing up. Next week, I believe we're doing Detoxify Now or Juice Nation. No, next week is Juice Nation. So anybody who's curious or interested in the process of doing home juicing, juice cleansing, any information, and really ramping up with superfoods the effects of doing green drinks and smoothies and things of that nature, please come in next week. We'll probably have an interactive setup here to where we'll be doing some sampling and a couple recipes that I enjoy for people to kind of get their juice on. So that'll be a lot of fun. So we definitely want to promote people swinging in for next week. We might do a little bit of standing room for anybody who's going to bring bigger groups. But if you're going to bring, as you can tell, we have about 5-6 seats open tonight. If you like, I would RSVP for next week because I'm going to try to promote this to a couple of other groups, and we might have some outside wonderful invited people to come in and take a look at what we do here on Thursday. So since it'll be a little bit more fun next week. So I hope you enjoy. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. Like I say, if you have any questions or need any follow-ups, feel free to email me at joseph@rrsuperfoods.com. And you can find us at rawrevelations.com for all the products mentioned, from the iodine to the TMG to the Detoxify. And if you have very personal, specific questions regarding radiation detox or any kind of questions like that, just send me an email. Always happy to help. Thank you.